The door slammed shut behind Clara as she strutted down the hallway, her heels clicking sharply on the tiles. A sharp chill ran through the air, not from the cool breeze outside, but from the tension that crackled between her and Adrian. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes hard as stone. "Clara, you really think you're just going to walk out of here like that?" Adrian's voice cut through the silence, each word dripping with frustration. Clara shot him a cold smile, barely pausing as she applied a fresh layer of crimson lipstick in the mirror. "Adrian, we've been over this. I'm going, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." Her tone was matter-of-fact, devoid of any guilt or hesitation. Adrian took a step forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "And you think I'm just going to stand by while you parade around with that guy?" "His name's Trevor," she corrected, adjusting her dress to perfection. "And yes, I do. Because I know you, Adrian. You don't have the guts to walk away from me, and we both know what happens if you try." Adrian's jaw tightened. "You think I'm scared of you, Clara? You think I won't file those divorce papers?" Her laugh filled the room, icy and dismissive. "You won't, because you know I'll take the house, the kids, everything. You'll be stuck paying for everything while I live my life. And you know what? I won't even let you see Oliver and Sophie without making you pay for every second." Adrian's breath hitched, but he forced himself to keep his voice steady. "And how do you think they'll feel when they find out what you're doing? When they realize you're willing to blow up their lives for some fling?" Clara's expression didn't change. If anything, she looked bored. "Adrian, let's not play the morality game. You can try to guilt-trip me all you want, but I know how this ends. You'll accept it because you have no other choice. And when I get back tonight, we'll talk like adults about how this arrangement is going to work." She turned her back on him, but Adrian's voice stopped her in her tracks. "If you walk out that door, don't expect me to be here when you come back, Clara." She paused for a second, glancing back over her shoulder with a smirk. "Oh, Adrian, you'll be here. You're too weak to leave." With that, she walked out, leaving Adrian standing alone in the cold silence of the room. But as the door clicked shut, Adrian's eyes burned with something new, determination. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone, and dialed a number he never thought he'd use again. Adrian waited, phone pressed to his ear, each ring feeling like a countdown. Finally, a voice answered, gravelly and familiar. "Adrian? It's been a while." "Yeah, Gabe, it has. I need your help. And I'm not asking as a friend. I'm asking as someone who's out of options." Adrian's voice was low, each word laced with urgency. A pause lingered on the other end. Gabe was one of those people who rarely got involved unless there was something serious at stake. "What happened?" Adrian glanced around the empty living room, the quiet of the house suddenly suffocating. "Clara's tearing everything apart. She's got this new guy, Trevor. I don't care about him, but she's talking about taking the kids, using them as leverage. I need to protect them, Gabe. I can't let her destroy their lives just because she's lost her mind." Gabe's voice hardened. "You know what you're asking me to do, right? You remember what happened last time we got involved in something like this?" Adrian took a breath, steadying himself. Memories from years past flashed through his mind. Nights and places he'd rather forget. Men he'd rather not remember. "But this was different." "I know, but I'm not looking for anything illegal. Just help me keep an eye on things. I need to know what she's planning, who she's talking to." "You still have those contacts?" "Yeah, but this could get messy, real messy," Gabe replied, his tone cautious. "If Clara finds out, she won't. And even if she does, I don't care anymore. She crossed the line tonight, Gabe. I'm done playing it safe." Adrian's voice cracked with the weight of his frustration. He was tired of pretending everything was fine, tired of being walked over. And this time, he wasn't going to let it happen. Gabe sighed, then gave a resigned chuckle. "All right, Adrian, I'm in. I'll make a few calls, get a couple of the old crew together. But you'd better be sure about this, because once we start, there's no going back." Adrian's grip tightened around the phone. "Believe me, I'm ready." Meanwhile, Clara strode into the neon-lit lounge where Trevor waited, looking every bit the charmer in his leather jacket and casual grin. The music pulsed through the speakers, and the air was thick with the buzz of conversations and laughter. As soon as Trevor saw Clara, he gave her a confident nod and raised his glass. "Hey, beautiful. You actually made it," he teased, leaning in closer as she sat down beside him. "And here I thought you'd back out at the last minute." Clara flashed a coy smile, resting her hand on his arm. "Not a chance. I'm done with Adrian trying to control my life. I'm ready for a real man, someone who doesn't hold me back." Trevor smirked, but there was a glint of curiosity in his eyes. "Yeah, about that. You really think Adrian's gonna let this slide? Most guys would fight back if their wife started dating someone new while they're still under the same roof." Clara laughed, but there was an edge to it. "He's harmless. Trust me. He talks big, but he'll never do anything about it. He's just too predictable." Trevor raised an eyebrow, a hint of doubt creeping into his expression. "Still, you sure this is worth the trouble? It's not like you're rolling in cash without him." Clara leaned in, whispering against his ear, her lips curving into a smile. "That's why I got a plan. Just stick with me, and we'll be living the good life before you know it." Trevor couldn't resist her confidence, so he shrugged and clinked his glass against hers. But even as they shared a toast, he couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was underestimating her husband. Adrian might seem like he was all bark and no bite, but Trevor knew better than to ignore the instincts that had kept him out of trouble all these years. Back at the house, Adrian didn't waste any time. He headed down to the basement, where a dusty metal lockbox lay hidden beneath a pile of old tools. Inside, he found a set of papers, a few small electronics, and a burner phone. It was like stepping back into a past he'd sworn never to revisit. But desperate times called for desperate measures. He dialed a number on the burner, and it rang only once before a familiar voice answered. "Adrian, what's the word?" It was Marcus, another old contact, who now worked as a security specialist. "Marcus, I need some tech, something to monitor phone calls, maybe a tracker or two. You know, just to keep tabs on Clara's movements and who she's talking to." Adrian's voice was firm, no hesitation. Marcus chuckled dryly. "Still got a taste for the cloak and dagger stuff, huh? All right, I'll send over a package. Should reach you by morning. Thanks. And Marcus, don't mention this to anyone." "Not yet." Adrian's voice softened, the weight of the situation bearing down on him. "You got it, man. Just don't go getting yourself in too deep." As Adrian ended the call, he felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. For the first time in months, he felt like he was taking back some control. Whatever Clara thought she had over him, she was about to realize just how wrong she was. By the time Clara came home, the clock had crept past 3 in the morning. She was a little buzzed from the night out, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. But the moment she stepped inside, she noticed something off. The living room lights were on, and Adrian was waiting, sitting calmly in the armchair like a shadow in the dim glow. "Well, look who finally decided to come home," he remarked, his voice almost too casual. Clara stopped, her smile faltering. "Adrian, don't start." "Oh, I'm not starting anything. Just making sure you know how this is going to play out." He stood, his eyes locked on hers. "You thought I'd roll over, but you're wrong, Clara. I'm done letting you walk all over me." She raised an eyebrow, but he saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. "You think you can scare me, Adrian? With what, exactly? You got nothing on me?" Adrian let out a slow, humorless laugh. "Is that what you think? Let's just say I have friends who are a lot better at finding out the truth than you realize. And I'm not going to let you drag our kids into this mess." Clara's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and something else, something close to fear. But she covered it with a sharp laugh. "You think your little buddies are going to change anything? I'll still get the house, the money, everything. You know how the system works?" Adrian stepped closer, his expression hardening. "Yeah, well, we'll see about that. Because I'm not going down without a fight." For a moment, the tension between them crackled like electricity. Neither of them moved, both caught in a dangerous game where the stakes were higher than they'd ever been before. But this time, Adrian wasn't going to be the one backing down. Clara was about to find out just how far he was willing to go to protect what mattered most to him. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He spent the early hours combing through old contacts, setting up a secure communication network with Gabe and Marcus. By dawn, a small, nondescript package arrived at his doorstep. Inside, Adrian found a few compact devices, a pair of listening bugs, a tracker, and a drive loaded with software that Marcus had customized for his needs. He didn't waste a second. Clara was still asleep upstairs, so he slipped outside and discreetly placed a tracker underneath her car bumper, ensuring it was tucked away where she'd never think to look. He then positioned a bug inside her purse, a little insurance to catch any conversations she thought were private. Adrian returned to the house, settling into his makeshift command center in the basement. He powered up the software, connecting the devices, and immediately heard a crackle of static turn into the soft hum of Clara's phone conversations. He exhaled, bracing himself for whatever he might find. Meanwhile, Clara's morning began with a nagging sense of unease. Adrian's new attitude rattled her more than she'd ever admit, but she buried the feeling as she went about her day. She dropped the kids off at school, kissed them on the cheek like everything was normal, and then sped off to meet Trevor at the cafe near his work. She arrived to find Trevor already waiting, stirring a cup of coffee. As she slid into the seat across from him, he noticed the tension in her eyes. "Rough morning?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Clara forced a smile, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "It's Adrian. He's acting different, more confident. It's like he knows something I don't." Trevor leaned in, lowering his voice. "Maybe he does. You sure he hasn't caught on to what you've been planning?" She waved a dismissive hand. "He's just trying to act tough. He doesn't have the guts to actually do anything." But as she said the words, doubt flickered across her face, and Trevor caught it. He took a sip of his coffee, watching her carefully. "Maybe it's time we play it safe. You don't want him getting too suspicious." Clara rolled her eyes, though her smile was strained. "Relax, Trev. I have everything under control." Back in the basement, Adrian listened, clenching his jaw as he heard every word. His mind raced with possibilities, but he forced himself to stay focused. If he made a move too soon, he'd risk tipping Clara off. So instead, he let them talk, soaking in every detail. He learned that Trevor was more than just a fling. He was a partner in Clara's scheme. They were discussing finances, ways to cut Adrian out of the picture completely. Adrian couldn't help but feel a surge of anger, but he swallowed it down, focusing on the long game. This time, Clara wasn't going to see him coming. The next evening, Adrian called Gabe, his voice tight with tension. "She's planning something big, Gabe. She's got this guy, Trevor, and they're plotting to bleed me dry. They're even looking into offshore accounts." Gabe let out a low whistle. "That's serious, Adrian. You need to counter this before she locks you out of everything." "I know. That's why I need your help with something more direct. We need to put the pressure on, make her think twice before she makes a move." Gabe hesitated. "What are you thinking?" Adrian glanced at the old map pinned to the basement wall, a relic from his past life that suddenly seemed all too relevant. "Remember that safe house outside of town? The one we used when things got too hot overseas." "Yeah, I remember. You thinking of stashing the kids there?" Adrian nodded, even though Gabe couldn't see him. "Just for a few days until I could figure out the next step. I don't trust her, and I don't trust Trevor to keep his nose out of our business." Gabe was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke with a grim resolve. "All right, Adrian. I'll make the arrangements. But if you're going down this path, you better be ready for whatever comes next." Adrian's voice hardened. "I am, and I'm not letting Clara win." 2 days later, everything was in motion. Adrian picked up Oliver and Sophie from school early, telling the principal there had been a family emergency. He loaded them into his SUV, forcing a smile as he told them about a surprise adventure. They reached the safe house by nightfall, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods. The kids were excited, thinking it was some kind of vacation. Adrian played along, setting up a movie for them while he stepped outside to meet Gabe, who had arrived with a small team. Gabe crossed his arms, glancing at the cabin. "Nice setup. How long you planning to keep them here?" "Just until I've got enough leverage on Clara. I want her to feel what it's like to lose control," Adrian replied, his eyes hardening. "She thinks she can rip our lives apart, but I'm not going to give her that chance." Gabe nodded, but he looked uneasy. "You sure this is what you want, Adrian? This could get ugly real fast." Adrian took a deep breath, staring out into the darkness of the woods. "It's already ugly, Gabe. I'm just trying to survive it." Meanwhile, Clara sat in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone and growing more anxious by the second. It was nearly 10 p.m., and she hadn't heard from Adrian all day. The kids hadn't come home from school, and his car wasn't in the driveway. She tried calling his cell, but it went straight to voicemail. A sharp knot of fear twisted in her stomach. She picked up her phone again and called her mother, her voice edged with panic. "Mom, I think something's wrong. Adrian took the kids, and he's not answering my calls." Her mother's voice crackled on the other end, full of concern. "Clara, what do you mean he took the kids? Are you sure he's not just trying to scare you?" Clara gritted her teeth. "I don't know, but he's never done anything like this before. I don't know where he is, and I can't lose Oliver and Sophie. Not like this." Her mother hesitated, then offered gently, "You might need to involve the police, dear. If he's really taken them." Clara swallowed, her mind racing. She wasn't ready for that yet. Calling the police would mean losing control, and she couldn't afford that. Not when she still had a plan. "No," she replied quickly. "Not yet. I'll handle it. I just need to find out where he's hiding them." After ending the call, Clara grabbed her purse and headed for the door. But as she stepped outside, she didn't notice the shadow that slipped out of sight across the street. One of Gabe's men, keeping a close eye on her every move. That same night, back at the cabin, Adrian sat on the porch, phone in hand. He called Marcus, who answered on the second ring. "You get anything from that bug?" Adrian asked, his voice low. "Oh, I got plenty," Marcus replied with a dark chuckle. "Clara's losing her mind trying to find you. She's called that Trevor guy 3 times, and she's definitely thinking about going to the cops." Adrian nodded to himself, a grim satisfaction settling in. "Good. Keep monitoring. If she makes any moves, I need to know about it first." "You got it, but Adrian, be careful. You push too hard and she might just push back." Adrian's eyes glinted in the darkness. "Let her. This time, I'm ready for whatever she throws at me." The next day, Clara met Trevor at a dingy bar on the outskirts of town, her face tight with stress. She gripped his arm, her voice desperate. "Adrian's gone off the deep end, Trevor. He's taken the kids somewhere, and I can't find him. We have to get them back or everything we've planned is going to fall apart." Trevor frowned, pulling her into a secluded booth. "We can figure this out, but you need to stay calm. If you panic, you're going to make mistakes." Clara bit her lip, her eyes flashing with frustration. "We don't have time for calm. We have to find them before he does something drastic." But as she spoke, she noticed something, a small black dot on the edge of her purse, barely visible against the lining. Her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly turned her back to Trevor, pretending to dig through her bag. "What's wrong?" Trevor asked, sensing her change in demeanor. Clara forced a tight smile. "Nothing. I just need to use the restroom." She slipped away, her mind spinning. She locked herself in a stall, peeled the bug off her purse, and crushed it under her heel, a fierce determination hardening her features. "So, Adrian, you want to play dirty?" she muttered to herself. "Fine. Let's see how you handle it when I start playing back." Clara stormed out of the bar, her mind racing. She had underestimated Adrian, and now she was backed into a corner. But she wasn't about to give up. She called Trevor, ordering him to meet her at the house. They needed to plan their next steps, and fast. Trevor showed up an hour later, but the atmosphere was tense. Clara's anger was palpable, and Trevor was on edge, uncertain about how far things might go. They paced the living room, the lights dim, as Clara ranted about Adrian's sudden change. "We have to find him, Trevor. If he thinks he can hide the kids from me, he's dead wrong," she hissed, her nails digging into her palms. Trevor raised his hands, trying to keep the peace. Okay, let's not do anything reckless. Maybe we can dig into his finances, see if he's made any sudden withdrawals or rented a place. I know a guy who can help us track down his movements." Clara's eyes lit up with a flash of hope. "Do it. Whatever it takes. Just find them." At the cabin, Adrian's phone buzzed, an alert from Marcus. Clara had discovered the bug, but she wasn't giving up. Adrian gritted his teeth, knowing it was only a matter of time before she tried something drastic. He checked in on the kids, who were playing with some board games Gabe had brought. He forced a smile for them, then stepped outside to think. Gabe met him on the porch, handing him a cup of coffee. "She's not going to let up, is she?" Adrian shook his head, staring out into the woods. "No, but she doesn't know what we've got planned. I'm going to make sure she sees just how far she's pushed me." Gabe took a sip, glancing over. And you're ready for that? For whatever comes next? Adrian looked back at the cabin, where his kids' laughter drifted through the open window. I have to be. For them. Clara and Trevor's search for Adrian led them to a private investigator who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. But every step they took, Adrian anticipated, thanks to the info Gabe's team kept feeding him. When Clara set up a meeting with a lawyer to discuss filing an emergency custody order, Adrian was already there, waiting outside the building, recording the entire encounter. He sent the footage to Marcus, who hacked into Trevor's financial records. Within hours, Adrian had everything he needed, proof of the shady money transfers and emails between Clara and Trevor discussing their plans to cut him out. He sent the files to Clara's phone with a simple message. You want to play dirty? Here's my hand. Clara froze when she received the message, her heart pounding as she opened the files. Her face drained of color as she realized just how thoroughly Adrian had turned the tables. She turned to Trevor, her hands shaking. He knows everything. He has evidence. He'll ruin us. Trevor's face hardened, the tension between them snapping. You dragged me into this, Clara. If you had kept control, none of this would have happened. Back at the cabin, Adrian received a call from Clara. He answered, keeping his voice cold and steady. You got my message, I see. Clara's voice trembled, her anger barely contained. Adrian, you can't do this. We can figure something out. Just give me back the kids and we'll go our separate ways. You don't need to do this. Adrian let out a bitter laugh. After everything you've done, you think I'd just hand them over and let you walk away? No, Clara. It's over. I've filed for full custody. You're not seeing them again. You think I'm just going to let that happen? She snapped, but there was desperation in her voice now. You don't have a choice, Adrian replied. I've got proof of everything, the money, the lies, the affairs. I'm not the one who'll be losing this fight. He ended the call, tossing the phone aside. Inside, the kids were waiting, oblivious to the battle raging around them. Adrian joined them, pulling them into a tight hug. He knew this wasn't the end. It was only a new beginning, but one where he finally held the upper hand. Days later, Adrian received the news he had been waiting for. The court had granted him temporary custody, pending an investigation into Clara's actions. He couldn't help but feel a surge of relief, though he knew the real fight was far from over. Clara, facing the reality of losing everything, tried one last desperate move. She called the police, claiming Adrian had kidnapped the kids. But by the time officers showed up at the cabin, Adrian was ready. He handed over the legal documents, showing he had every right to protect his children. Clara's accusations fell apart under the weight of his evidence, and the officers left with a warning for her to stay away. Clara stood on the edge of the woods, watching as Adrian guided the kids back into the cabin, his protective arm around their shoulders. Her rage turned to bitter tears as she realized she'd lost. Adrian wasn't the man she could manipulate anymore, and now she had nothing left but the wreckage of her own schemes. Trevor, unwilling to be dragged any further into Clara's crumbling life, cut ties and left town without a word. He wasn't about to stick around for the fallout. Months later, Adrian and the kids settled into a new life. The past wasn't forgotten, but it was behind them. He'd never asked for this battle, but he'd fought it for the right reasons, for his children, for their future. And as he watched them laugh and play in the backyard of their new home, he knew it was worth every moment. Clara, on the other hand, faced a different future, one without the control she thought she'd wielded, one where she had to face the consequences of her actions. She might have lost the game she started, but Adrian would never forget the price they all paid along the way. And for once, Adrian didn't look back.